What is the real story behind the haunting of the Annabelle doll? I think most people know about the movie franchise that focused around this doll, but the real doll that this is based off of still exists. The story begins in 1970 when a student nurse is gifted this Raggedy Ann doll and things become very strange. The legend of the haunting reports that the girl and her roommate would come home and find the doll sitting in different positions. There were also several reports of people saying they saw this doll move on its own, but things became even more alarming when handwritten notes start to appear around the apartment, all saying, "Help me." The paranormal investigation team, the Warrens, as well as countless other mediums and other investigators all come in for this doll, and the story that kind of centralizes is that the doll is possessed by a girl with malicious intent who they coined as Annabelle. The doll is taken into the possession of the Warrens and to this day sits inside of their Connecticut museum locked inside of a glass box.
Airtober Day 11. This is Norman. Around 18 years ago, Norman was built to appear in a music video for the band Interpol, and for some reason, people seem to adore him. However, Norman then disappeared for 10 years. Then, in 2014, an auction on iCollector.com titled "Animatronic Creepy Ghoul Puppet from a Music Video" was listed, and sure enough, it was Norman. Norman resurfaced after 10 years, and it was shocking to see what horrible, disturbing shape he was in. Despite having a strong fan following, no one bought him, and he disappeared once again for another 5 years. He was then found and acquired by a YouTuber, and, well, the rest speaks for itself.
This happened Halloween of 2008. I was 14 years old and remember being especially excited for that year's Halloween. It fell on a Friday, meaning we could stay out later than usual. I was going to go trick-or-treating with my friend Matthew, after which we would go back to my house for a sleepover. I lived with my dad, who worked night shifts as a security guard. He was going to be gone pretty much from sundown to sunup, leaving Matthew and I to do our own thing. Matthew showed up at about 7 p.m., to which we quickly threw on some cheap costumes and headed out. Trick-or-treating in our neighborhood was always the worst. We lived in this foresty area where the houses were really spread out. We probably walked a good quarter mile between each door. But at the same time, I think the homeowners kind of realized this, as they would typically hand out larger amounts of candy to make up for it. Of course, we'd see other trick-or-treaters as we walked between houses, but not as many as you'd think. There weren't all too many kids living in the area. We'd been trick-or-treating for about 2 hours, when I noticed someone following us. It was either a grown man or a really tall kid, I couldn't tell. He had a Michael Myers mask covering his face. At first, I thought he was just trick-or-treating like everyone else, but he didn't have a bag to hold candy. And it was just him. It wasn't like he was with his kid or anything. I told Matthew about it, but he wanted to keep going. He reassured me that if the guy kept following us, we could go back. So we continued hitting houses. But the guy did continue to follow us. Something I picked up on pretty quick is that he wasn't even walking up to the house's front doors to get candy. He stayed behind us. Again, I told Matthew. This time I could tell he was a bit more on edge. Coming up was a shortcut through the woods, which led directly to my house. We took it, sprinting as soon as we entered the woods. We had no idea if we were followed, but either way, we immediately started locking all the doors and windows. I remember I was upstairs locking my bedroom window, when I heard yelling from back downstairs. It was Matthew. I ran down to him. He was standing next to the living room window. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't say anything. Instead, he pointed outside the window. I followed his finger, squinting as my eyes adjusted to the darkness. All I could see were trees. I looked back at Matthew. What? He told me the guy in the Michael Myers mask was standing out there. Now I just thought he was trying to scare me, but when I looked back, I actually saw him. He was deep in the forest, halfway covered by one of the trees, just standing there motionless. I went to the kitchen to grab the phone. I called my dad as I walked back to the window. When he picked up, I told him that there was a stranger outside in a Michael Myers mask. Well, what is he doing?
I'm going to be telling you a true scary story about the children who lived in my woods called the Lost Boys. As a kid, I would always play in the woods behind my house. And as a kid, I loved playing in them because I had a whole bunch of friends who lived in the woods. And you might be thinking, kids don't live in the woods. And that's exactly right, because they were actual ghosts. But as a kid, I did not know that. I would go out every single day, and there was about 10 boys who would play with me. We would build tree forts, we would play hide and seek, chase, everything. I invited them over for dinner all the time, but they told me that they couldn't leave, that they were stuck in the woods. I didn't understand, but I just let them be. I would always bring my friends out there, and none of them could see them. Everyone just told me I was crazy. But that was until I went missing for 2 days because one of the boys told me to come with him. So I did. He took me really, really far back into the woods, and I was super lost. And things started to go really bad. Stay tuned for part 2.
The most disturbing dolls caught on camera. Warning, this is very creepy.
I've been out of her head. Here it is. There's my favorite perfume.